Oh, please.
Go to YouTube.
Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, we just gotta let that breathe, Joe. We just gotta let that breathe just a little bit. Where's my pen? Did I take my pen now?
If you don't, I got one.
Oh, I got it. Put it in my pocket. That's CeeLo all day.
Man.
CeeLo was see, that's another thing, man. I just never understood how they didn't make it. Maybe they just didn't have the connections, you know.
Well, I mean, he got a picture of his house where he's shaking hands with Chuck D. So, yeah. So,
All right, Mo. All right, it is 6:01 in the city of Waterloo, and ladies and gentlemen, it's been too long. And of course, at the top of the 6 o'clock hour time for KBBG's very own sports talk show, Put It On The Line. Another exciting season of Put It On The Line. We were off a little bit longer than normal, but we are excited and ready to go for another season of Put It On The Line. Of course, you know, the usual suspect is in the building today, Joey Man, and of course, our engineer for this evening will be Maurice. One time only, and we're going to take it, darn it. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you know the rules of Put It On The Line. We throw out the topics, we discuss the topics, and we open up the phone lines roughly 20-25 minutes into the show where you can give us a call. The number is 234-1441. We truly enjoy and love to interact with our listening audience. If you're into talking sports, if you want to talk all sports, and we got a lot of sports talk to get caught up on and discuss today, give us a call, 234-1441. Of course, we also want to remind our listening audience that next week we will be starting our mid-winter fundraiser. That's going to be the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd. You can check us out online and as well as donate online at kbbgfm.org, or just give us a call during the fundraiser, 234-1441. I always stress the importance of supporting institutions that are catering to our community. And of course, we have a beautiful facility, 918 Newell Street Broadcast Park, that you help build, and we will always continue to need your continued support to grow as a radio station. So help in your continued support of KBBG Radio. Next week we have our mid-winter fundraiser, and I say this all the time. You know, we truly appreciate our listening audience support from day one. If you go all the way back to Cottage Street, and now we're right here on Newell Street, a beautiful facility again that you helped build. So we thank you, and we ask for your continued support in this endeavor. 234-1441. Next week, the mid-winter fundraiser starting February 21st, 22nd, and the 23rd. Like I stated, you can donate online. Visit www.kbbgfm.org, or you can call 234-1441. With all that being said, my friend, Joey Man.
yes, sir.
How are you doing, my friend?
Can't complain. It's been too long. But I'm glad to be back in the building. So.
We are back, and as always, usually, and of course, if you're new to Put It On The Line, this is KBBG's very first sports talk show. We thank our station manager, Beverly Douglas, every year for the opportunity to get on air and just run our mouths about sports. Sometimes we know what we're talking about, sometimes we don't, and if we don't, our listening audience will correct us, that's for sure. So we are very much appreciative of this opportunity to come online here at KBBG and talk a lot of sports. And how many years, Joy?
This should be
It's been
11.
It's almost 10 or 11 years,
Yeah.
and normally the normal process of putting on the line, we will usually go from start roughly around September, mid-September at the start of the football season. Had a delay this year, had to make sure we get some things in order, cross our T's, dot our I's. Now the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and we are going to do our best to bring you a better show this season. Normally the season goes from September to roughly June when the NBA season ends, but since we started a little bit late, we're pretty much going to go through the whole summer season, but we have a whole host of new ideas that I think you will be excited about. We're going to get the community involvement a little bit more, and we're also going to touch bases with our youth. We're going to make that a big part of the show in the up and coming future, and we're going to highlight our area youth just a tad bit more. But with that said, Joy, we missed out. Obviously, we missed out on a lot of things, whether it's the college national championship, whether it's the NFL, the whole season, and of course the Super Bowl. We're in the midst of the NBA season. We're going to talk about all of that tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But first and foremost, Joy, we missed out on a lot of headlines, a lot of big headlines in the NFL season. And we're just going to do a quick rundown of the NFL season, get our quick thoughts. And again, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we open up the phone lines in 20 minutes, 234-1441. If you have something that you want to discuss, hey, that's what we're here for. Put it on the line. First and foremost, Joy, the NFL. One of the nation's top sports. You can't deny that. And of course, our attention is always on the NFL, whether it's during the season or the off season. And there was a lot of big stories in the NFL. But before we get to some of the intricate storylines of the NFL, what was the surprise for you during the NFL season that you just didn't see coming?
That's a good question. I actually expected San Francisco to have a better season than they had. I mean, judging from what they did last season in the NFL, and it was good. They got to the Super Bowl. I think it was just the simple fact that the bullseye was on San Francisco's back, so they weren't able to do a complete re-performance of what they did last season. There was a lot of games that they should have, to me, that they should have won and that they didn't. But all in all, that was my surprise. But
my surprise, Joy, was Kansas City Chiefs. The season, absolutely, the season they had prior to Andy Reid coming and sort of changing things around was very surprising because you don't see that sometimes, and I don't know if that's the norm now in the NFL, but a team that won maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 games prior to that, and then they go all the way to a point where they were almost looking at going undefeated, even though they did. At one point, they were 8-0 in the season. He was able to get them to the playoffs. For me, when I look at the beginning of the NFL season last year, I did not see the Kansas City Chiefs coming. Go ahead.
Well, the thing, I think I have to agree with you on that. But the thing about it is, I think it wasn't a surprise for me because you had two entities that they were going through a lot of stuff. I mean, you look at Andy Reid and what he was going through with, the passing of his son, and the tragedy that happened in Kansas City before, and it almost seemed like they came into a situation where they needed each other, and what happened with them was, to me, what was supposed to happen.
Do you see next year Kansas City being in the mix, a possible team to be reckoned with as we move forward?
That's kind of hard to say.
And?
Well, I mean, you know what? I'm gonna go back and retract what I said. The surprise performance for me in the NFL this season was actually San Diego made it to the playoffs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Because of the simple fact that just watching them during the season, I didn't really think that they made it, especially with Kansas City and especially with what Peyton Manning was doing in Denver. And in that division, you had a lot going on, so I didn't see.
I wasn't surprised with San Diego, and I'll tell you why. Because I've always felt, and I believe that Phillip Rivers is a franchise quarterback. I think he's definitely a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't that surprised because Norv Turner, one of the knocks on Norv Turner, he can get you there, but he can't get you over the hump. You know, that's sort of the knock of a lot of actual coaches, but and that was the knock on North Turner. You know, he does a good job of when it comes to running the offense or being an offensive coordinator. But as a coach that can get a team over the edge, definitely wasn't. Who was your most disappointing team this year in the NFL?
The Giants.
Tell me why.
Just I didn't. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Eli was just going to come out and just throw the ball like that all over the field, I would have laughed at you. But it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Basically, is what it was. And I don't know whether you could say what he wasn't reading the defenses right or whether the offensive line wasn't blocking for him, but it looked a mess.
I'll tell you the most disappointing team this year, and I know you Cowboy fans, you know I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so you may take this statement personally.
We should be getting a call pretty soon on that one.
But Dallas Cowboys, you know, I think, you know, and when I say disappointing, because the talent is there. I look at their offense. You have a good quarterback in Tony Romo. You got the offensive weapons there: Dez Bryant, Miles Austin. You also have the probably going to be a Hall of Fame tight end with Jason Witten.
Yeah.
And you don't do anything with that. The defense. I'm not saying the defense was at one of the best defense in the league, but they definitely was a defense that can at least get a team enough wins to make the playoffs. And when they weren't able to make the playoffs, especially if you look at some of the games that they lost, I think to me, at least for me, I was expecting them to make the playoffs, and I thought that they were the most disappointing team in the NFL. What's wrong with Dallas, Joseph? And how does a team like Dallas get better?
Well, me personally, the thing for me, I believe that everything is predicated off the run.
Okay.
And DeMarco Murray was a great running back this year for Dallas. He was averaging pretty close to 5 yards a carry on the ground this season, and I just don't think he got enough touches. Because
So you're saying the balance of the offense was
because
more pass than run, and that affected the effectiveness of the offense?
I don't believe Dallas's true identity is just throwing the ball all over the field like they're doing. I believe Dallas, their true identity to me is just power football, running the ball down the field, having great defense. They've had a pretty good 3-4 defense that they've ran in Dallas, but with DeMarcus Ware being out of the situation, it kind of changed it. I mean, to be honest, I don't think Bob Ryan should have left the building and went to New Orleans.
And see,
you see the difference now.
See, my angle is the issue with Dallas is not so much the players or the team, it's the owner. Because I think Jerry Jones, he has too many hats, and I think his son is involved in things, and I think because when you have too many hats, GM, the owner, and that's not your specialty, when the owner gets his head, because one of the knocks against Al Davis was he always wanted speed. Yeah. So he had a hand in, not recruiting, but drafting, and he always looked for speed as opposed to talent, and that was one of his biggest problems. I think that was the Raiders' downfall. I look at the same way as Al Davis had his hand in the operations of the LA Raiders or Oakland Raiders. The same issue with the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones, his hands is too much involved. You have to hire a real coach, not a puppet coach. Unfortunately, Garrett is a puppet coach. You have to hire a real coach and allow that coach to coach. Okay, and until you get to that point, Dallas will always be snake bitten, and I don't really believe that they'll be able to get past the Washingtons, the Philadelphias, and the Giants of the league. So until they change that aspect of the game, meaning Jerry Jones takes a step back and just let the people that he hired do what they're supposed to do, they're going to always be snake bitten. There was a lot of other storylines in the NFL, and before we get to the more touchy storylines, obviously you watch the playoffs. Denver Broncos made the playoffs, had one of the best seasons, or at least offensive-wise, than any other team in the NFL history. Denver Broncos put up over 7,000 yards of offense. You know who was a close second?
Say that again.
Who was a close second next to Denver in offensive production? Philadelphia, Green Bay, New Orleans, and San Diego. And I think that's where the future is going to be with those 5 teams. But Denver makes the playoffs, an outstanding season. Peyton Manning breaking records, league MVP, all of these accolades, and they lose the Super Bowl. Before you talk about the Super Bowl in hand, was that a disappointing year for the Broncos?
No.
Being that they did not win the Super Bowl. Why?
No. They got farther than what they did last year.
Okay.
You know, they made it. I mean, the thing about it is, this is the same team. This is pretty much the same team from last year. And they were supposed to be in the Super Bowl last year. And they didn't make it because the Baltimore Ravens, you know, they got them in their first game of the playoffs last year. They got them. But this year, they actually, I don't want to say, you know, part of it was correcting a lot of the mistakes that they did last year, but I really don't even want to say that because.
So you're telling me this wasn't a disappointing season for the Denver Broncos?
No.
Let me ask you this question: if the Miami Heat do not win the NBA Finals, would that be, hypothetically speaking, obviously?
To the individual, it would probably be disappointing, but I mean, just overall, when you look back at your season, you know, I would rather lose in the Super Bowl than lose in any other round.
This is the year 2014, and I hate to do this to you, Joy, but you're wrong.
Okay.
All right, here's why you're wrong. Yes, it was a disappointing year for the Denver Broncos. They put that team together to win Super Bowl. Peyton Manning has a small window. A very small window. He's going to be a year older, and the league is going to catch up. You know how the league is. You know, the league see what you do the first year. They make the necessary adjustments, so it's not going to be as easy, in my humble opinion, as the Denver Broncos had last year. 2, the team was, again, when you have a unbelievable year like you did, okay, and then to not show up in the Super Bowl, one of the biggest sports events of the year, that's disappointing. Just like the reporter asked Peyton Manning, what did he say? The reporter said, help me out. Was this I don't think the words was disappointing, but something to the degree was, do you guys felt that you let the team down or the fans down during the in the Super Bowl? And he said, no, I thought we did a heck of a job. But Chet Bailey, on the other hand, said, no, this was a horrible game. We played horrible. Look, the bottom line is, Peyton Manning, and this is where we're going to talk about Peyton Manning's legacy, ladies and gentlemen. You can give us a call at 234-1441. The phone lines are officially open up. Sauya J Joey Man, put it on the line. Our engineer for this evening is Maurice. Here's why it was a disappointing year, and here's why Peyton Manning's legacy, in my humble opinion, is still fragile. And here's why I say that. Peyton Manning has a history, Joseph, of not showing up for the big games.
He's 11-12, I know.
Not showing up for the big games. Now, the reason why Terry Bradshaw is in the playoffs is because he wins games. Look at his brother Eli Manning.
Yeah.
Big moments, he steps up. To me, that what makes, to me, in my humble opinion, that is what makes a player's legacy, is what you do when it's time to do what you're supposed to do. Granted, Peyton Manning had a better Super Bowl number-wise than he had in previous Super Bowls, okay? But he didn't get the job done.
No.
8 points, Joseph, was that more of Seattle's defense or Peyton Manning not showing up for big games?
I don't even think it was about Peyton Manning not showing up. It was just, you know, you have the number 1 offense in the league versus the number 1 defense in the league. Defense trumps offense all day long.
Championships all the time.
Yeah, but you can't throw from the ground, and you can't, you can't get a first down on the ground when you're getting tackled for a loss. So I mean, a lot of it of what happened, because if you look at the other side of the coin, Russell Wilson didn't have a spectacular game.
True.
He didn't have to.
True. Just
like with any other game that Seattle has had this year. Russell Wilson does not have to put in that superstar effort in order for Seattle to win the game. It was just pretty much, Russell Wilson just managed the clock and made plays when he had to. They had a couple long third downs that he had to convert. But a lot of it was just really on that defense, that secondary. And you look at Denver's record, and this past season, they have not seen a defense just not only with speed, they hit. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't seen a defense like that all season. And then you finally see something like that in the Super Bowl.
I've had it up to here with people making excuses for Peyton Manning.
I'm not making no excuse. I'm just saying he just got beat by good defense.
I understand it. And I'll be the first to tell you.
Well, not good, great.
Defense wins championships. But listen, Joseph, 8 points. Come on, that's not all defense, because and here's why I say that. Because if you go back a few years back when the New England Patriots had that awesome, unbelievable year, okay? But they at least showed up for the playoffs, okay? Because it took some miracle throws by Eli Manning to get the job done.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm going back to Peyton Manning's legacy. You know, one of the things they say about Peyton Manning, and I've heard this on a national radio talk show, Dan Patrick show, he says Peyton Manning has a tendency to get happy feet. When the pocket starts to close in on him, you see his feet get a little bit happy. I'll tell you another thing about Peyton Manning. This is what Richard Sherman said. He said, we weren't afraid of the deep ball. What did I say 2 years ago, Joseph? I said Peyton Manning, his arm strength is not there. I just couldn't understand during the regular season how teams wasn't adjusting to just give him the upfront stuff. He's not going to beat you long distance, so you might as well play more up front, just like the Seattle Seahawks did. Their D-backs was all up in their face because they're thinking your arm is not strong enough to beat us long, so Russ Worker's not going to beat us on those quick slants. And they shut that down for the most part. Granted, again, Peyton Manning threw for 200-300 yards, but didn't get the plays done when it really counted. And I think that goes against Peyton Manning's legacy. Do you think that the loss this year in the Super Bowl, and let's say he never makes it back to the Super Bowl, will that affect his legacy? 2, would he still be considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time? And 3, if you had your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, where does Peyton Manning stand?
Well, I think the thing about it is, first of all, I don't know where everybody gets this greatest quarterback of all time. I don't know. First of all,
tell me why.
Because I just don't think he is. I mean, he's up there. I'll give credit where credit is due. He's great during the season, and he's had some playoff wins, and he's also had some losses. This is probably losing in the Super Bowl like this. This was probably the worst loss that he's had in his playoff history. Okay. Period. But will it affect? I would say probably the only way it would affect his legacy, I think he probably would still be considered in the upper echelon, but it's just, okay, now we start, the picture is really starting to visualize of how we're supposed to look at Peyton Manning. Okay. And I think that's just what it is.
Here's what it is. Okay. No, you're not the greatest quarterback.
I've never believed that, though.
Listen. Peyton Manning is a fantastic regular season quarterback. You go back to history at Tennessee. One of the knocks on him was against Peyton Manning when he was in college at Tennessee was he could never win the big games. He goes to the NFL. T. Martin comes in, and what happens? They win a national championship. T. Martin, mobile quarterback, by the way. Peyton Manning. Fast forward to the year 2014, same Peyton Manning. Great regular season. He always have a great regular season. But when it comes down to winning playoffs and again, Super Bowls, let me give you, here, I typed up the best quarterbacks of all time. And here's the top 5. I'll give you the top 5 according to Ranker.com, which is a nationally website that ranks different quarterbacks, teams, whatsoever. So visit it if you like. Joe Montana, number 1. Peyton Manning, number 2. Tom Brady, number 3. Dan Marino, number 4. John Elway, number 5. Would you agree with that top 5? And let's say if you had your Mount Rushmore quarterbacks, meaning only 4 can be on the list, who's on your list, Joseph? Okay,
my 4 would have to be Joe Montana, Tom Brady, John Elway, and Dan Marino as the 4th one.
Okay. Oh, Joe Montana, yes. Tom Brady, absolutely. To me, Tom Brady is way better. I call him Tommy the Great because he gets it done. Look what Tommy had this year. Tommy did not have anybody this year. Tommy makes no-name wide receivers great.
Great. Yeah.
That's Tom Brady. So here you go. Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Dan Marino, and I'm debating on putting Steve Young over John Elway. Tell me, is that a crazy move?
You know what? I mean,
because
that's a toss. That's a toss-up between those two.
I put things on the line. John Elway didn't do anything until who got there? Terrell Davis, right? The fantastic running back. To me, that is who got not Tom Brady, but John Elway his rings. Because really, if you look at John Elway's career, you know, he's had great comebacks. But if you still look at it, he always fell short of winning that big time game as well.
But he has 2 rings and we still hold him in the highest respect.
And that's why I said, that's why I'm debating on how many Steve Young got. All right, I'm debating on kicking John Elway out and put Steve Young in there. But Peyton Manning is definitely not my top. He's not on the Mount Rushmore.
No.
Easily not. Easily 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 4, 1. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We still got a whole list of topics we're going to try to get to because we're just trying to get caught back up. Obviously, NFL season is one of the most popular sports. The NFL is one of the most popular sports. So we're trying to get caught up on some of the stories and storylines in the NFL. Seattle Seahawks. So did you see them winning the Super Bowl? I picked them to win it, but I didn't think that they were going to get there. I'm not going to lie. I didn't think that Russell Wilson. I didn't believe he had arrived yet, and I still don't think he had arrived yet, or has not arrived.
He's not done.
So he still got some growing to do, and that's the only reason why I didn't put them in the Super Bowl. But again, if you look at the defense. To me, the defense got them.
It's what predicate. I mean, and it's just, and you know what? You know, Russell Wilson right now, you could consider him a franchise quarterback for Seattle.
No. Oh, for Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the franchise quarterback. They got rid of Matt Flynn and kept him. Okay, enough said. The thing about it is, he's an intelligent player. He knows his role, and it's just a simple fact. And he's even said in the interviews, our defense predicates what I do. So I mean, he goes with the flow. He's not stepping on anybody's toes. And honestly, I thought about this in the playoffs last year because I was hoping to see Seattle and San Francisco go at it last year. But Seattle lost to Atlanta, who they shouldn't have lost. They shouldn't have lost to them. And I thought about it after that. I was like, I think if Seattle was to see San Francisco in the playoff, I think Seattle would beat them.
That was your thought process.
That was my thought process.
I picked San Francisco, and the reason why I picked San Francisco, and really, if you look at the game, they was one play away from winning the game. So it's not that was a bad pick, but again, Seattle defense, I'll give them props. Definitely one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. I did have some stats for you. I'll get that in just a brief moment. But I thought that Colin Kaepernick was just a little bit further in his development than what I was seeing with Russell Wilson, and I was just looking at the whole season.
Well, the thing about it is, one thing that helped Russell Wilson too is that he was kind of off the radar this year.
That's true.
I mean, a lot of the bullseye was on Colin Kaepernick, and especially with this new style of coaching that's coming in with Harbaugh, and you have now Pete Carroll, who's adding to this, and Chip Kelly down in Philadelphia. Just this new look of the NFL that's coming in, and Russell was just able to be like, just been able to continue to go through the motions and do what he's got to do. So,
Joseph, one of the things during the NFL season, and we're going to sort of take a side note, it's still in the thought process of Seattle, but there was a playoff game where Seattle obviously beat San Francisco, and there was obviously Richard Sherman, who is the defensive back for the Seattle Seahawks, made a great play on the ball, was able to get the interception, which pretty much sealed the deal for Seattle. But the bigger story came after the game with the interview where he was interviewed, and Richard Sherman sort of Well, let me just let our listening audience know, unless you forgot about it or don't remember. He was interviewed by a reporter right after the game, and he just basically he just in a nutshell, it was just, to me, it's like he was just saying, look, that dude garbage, he can't guard me. That's how I look at it. Now, I understand his voice was a little high, but they made so big of a deal off of it, and then you got the thug label that was thrown his way. Now, what's your whole take on that whole situation? Was it much to do about nothing? Was it media driven? Was it that quote unquote angry moment that sort of got out of hand in the interview? And maybe Richard Sherman should have probably took the interview a different direction?
Well, I mean, the thing about it is, to me, you caught him in the heat of the moment.
Okay.
He just made a huge play.
Okay.
In the back of the end zone against Michael Crabtree, who actually is a good wide receiver.
Decent at best. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you agree with Sherman then?
Absolutely. Michael Crabtree, I just didn't think he had the speed. Now, he does have good hands, but speed-wise, no way.
Okay. But the thing about it is, you caught him in the heat of the moment. He had just made a big play that put them in the Super Bowl. And it wasn't just him. Michael Smith was actually able to catch the tip drill. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, he just made a great play in the back of the end zone, and you caught him in the heat of the moment, and in that moment, his testosterone is still going, and he's still having that attitude, and you really just caught him in the heat of the moment. And I think a lot of fans got to see that's how it is on that field. Levels are high, and it's just you caught him in the heat of the moment. Period.
Let me tell you something. I've always said this about the media, and we don't put ourselves in this category. Yeah. But the media, in my humble opinion, they drive stories that don't need to be driven. Yeah. And what I saw, when I first saw the interview, I'm just like, what's the big deal? He was just, it was an intense moment. Look, dude is garbage. I shut him down. Don't you ever. And then after that came the thug word. And one thing I find that a lot of media members like to do is they like to throw the thug word towards certain athletes. Not all athletes. Now, all athletes can do the same thing, but only certain athletes get that thug label. Let me give you an example. You remember a few years ago, well, not a few years ago, probably over 10 years ago, roughly, when the Malice in the Palace, where Ron Artest went into the stadium. Yeah. You already know what happened. Now, no one's defending Ron Artest, okay? And he probably, that came off a little thuggish, okay? So I'm not.
He got beer poured on himself.
Well, it's still to go up in the stands and beat up somebody.
That's extreme.
That's extreme. But you see this all the time in the National Hockey League. I've seen stories, and I've seen it with my own eyes, where I saw a player beat up a fan with a hockey stick, but they don't get the thug label. Why not, Joseph? Well,
just to add on what you were saying, there was a hockey game like a couple weeks ago where
they didn't even.
It was at the beginning of the puck of the drop. The other coach decided, I'm going to put my brawlers on the floor and we're just going to go at it.
They didn't even. Now let's imagine if the NBA team did that. Would we be talking about all these thugs? Let me tell you something, people. Richard Sherman said it the best. He said, the thug word is the new N word.
Yeah.
And I agree with Richard Sherman, because that's how, in my humble opinion, bigots operate. They like to use cold words. Yeah. Urban, thug.
It's just about getting that message out there that, you put a label on him. I can't label him the way I want to say it, so I'm going to use this.
And that's the whole thing about bigotry and racism. It's a prejudging of an individual, an ignorant prejudging of an individual. Here's Richard Sherman, went to Stanford, graduated from Stanford.
3.9.
Very intelligent brother, but he's just a brother. You know how we are. We emotional people, and that's just how we are. That's why, so when I saw the interview, I didn't see nothing big or nothing to do about anything. Other than media driven.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I can totally understand, because, during that whole media week, the one thing that just kept coming up when they were doing interviews, he's from Compton. Yeah. He's from Compton. Yeah. Okay, we get it. Just like he said in his commercial, not every black person from Compton is a gang member.
Come on now.
So I've been to Compton. Not all parts of Compton are bad.
Come on now.
So I totally understand with what you're saying. I totally agree with it. And
absolutely.
I think it's just something that's got to change. I think a good portion of the why it happens is just no understanding.
No. Here's this, and this is what. That's why I'm
You
glad.
fear what you just don't, what you don't know.
I'm glad Richard Sherman did what he did, because you have to start putting some of these reporters on blast. Just like the whole, you know my take on the mobile running quarterback.
Yeah.
No, he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he may not have the strong arm or the most accurate arm, but who does in the NFL nowadays? You're not going to get Peyton Manning all the time. You're not going to get Tom Brady. You know there are the Matt Staffords and just subpar quarterbacks in the league. So why do you have to put these quarterbacks in a category? Oh, he's a running quarterback. No, he is a quarterback.
Who happens to use his feet to extend the play.
And we saw what happened in the Super Bowl when you have a standstill quarterback and a mobile quarterback. Because just like you mentioned, Russell Wilson was able to make plays when the pocket collapsed. He was able to use his legs to make a play. But he's still a quarterback. Again, these are some of these codes. You see, this has been on my mind for a minute. They use these cold words, okay, to put us in the box. So I'm glad, okay, Richard Sherman sort of addressed that. Look, this time is going by fast. Let me get it moving. Okay, another topic, Joseph, that was sort of major in the NFL during the regular season was the whole Richie Incognito. Now, of course, if you haven't heard or forgot, Richie Incognito was an offensive lineman for the Miami Dolphins, who happens to be white. What's the other guy's name? The other offensive line.
Jonathan Martin.
Jonathan Martin, thank you.
Also from Stanford.
Jonathan Martin is an African-American quarterback. Now, Jonathan Martin stated, was sort of left the team, and the reason for leaving the team, he stated that he was being bullied by Richie Incognito. They played one or two of the messages that was left from Richie Incognito to Jonathan Martin on Jonathan Martin's voicemail, and he used the N-word. Now, Richie Incognito happens to be white, Martin black. Now, one of the whole brouhaha over this whole story was the Miami Dolphin players, and of course, who are majority African Americans, because the NFL is like 70-80% African American, said, and I'm paraphrasing, that he's Richie Incognito is an honorary brother to a degree, and they were not offended by him using the N-word. Where do you stand on that, Joseph? The whole storyline, and then the intricate parts. When I say the whole storyline, the bullying storyline, is there any quote-unquote bullying in the NFL based on the nature of the sport? And two, what is your thought process on a white person using the N-word towards an African American, and then African Americans around them sort of supporting Richie?
I don't agree with that in the least bit.
Explain why.
I mean, it's just not right. I'm not going to accept, and anybody. You're just not. I'm not going to tolerate, especially when I find discomfort in you using the N-word towards me, and that goes for white, black, it's just anybody.
Good point.
It shouldn't be tolerated at all.
Here's my thought process. What has this world come to?
I don't know.
Because I just remember when I used to play football, nothing like that would ever. Another player of another race wouldn't even think to do it in any type of manner, let alone the other teammates and members saying, "Oh, it's all right. He's an honorary brother." That type of thing. And then to me,
I don't know where that came from.
And to me, that just tells me the state or the mind state of a lot of NFL players. Because if you go back at the beginning of the year, there was also an issue with the N-word being thrown with Philadelphia Eagles in regards to
talking about Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper, who used the N-word at a concert, which was taped all on YouTube, and that sort of. You saw the real players' reaction because McCoy was like, "Hey, I don't feel this, brother." Now, we're forgiving people in Philadelphia. They obviously forgave them. But again, just going back to the whole Richie Incognito thing, my question to Jonathan Martin, I said, if I could interview Jonathan Martin, and listen, this may come off wrong, But listen, Jonathan Martin, you're in the NFL, which is a tough and rough sport. And you know, you've been in a football team, Joe. You know how we talk. You know,
Yeah.
it's aggressive, it's abusive to a degree, and you have to have the thick skin. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't see the bullying aspect of it, because I think it's just like this. Can you imagine Muhammad? You know Muhammad Ali. He likes to talk.
Yeah.
He likes to talk mess. So imagine him talking mess to his sparring partner, just talking mess. Is that bullying? No, because it's the nature of the sport.
Yeah.
In the NFL, you got to be tougher than the next guy. Sometimes to bring out that. Now listen, let me be upfront. I'm not downplaying bullying, because I do believe bullying is a very, very real issue within young kids in schools and even adults to a degree. But from this particular standpoint, in that football locker room, I think part of the culture is to make your fellow man tougher, and sometimes that means you might have to Jones on him, something to that degree.
Just to bring out that aggressive nature.
Just to bring out that aggressive nature, because we're going to need that aggressive nature on the football field. Do you see Jonathan Martin getting another chance in the NFL?
No. I really don't.
What about Richie Incognito?
I don't think so neither. And the reason why I say not with Jonathan Martin, the whole thing about it is, I don't agree with what the young brother did. It's just how he handled it.
Yeah.
And first of all, you know, in any organization, there is always a chain of command.
Okay.
And first of all, you know what I'm saying? You went through your agent, and then you go and release. You basically went through the media to basically make your case, when you actually not only talked to your teammate, you should have talked to your coach.
You should have said something to Incognito.
Period.
Period.
Or you could have talked to the GM. You could have talked to the owner.
Yeah.
And it's not about keeping it in the house. I'm gonna follow the chain of command, because, you know, at the end of the day, it is about respect. Hey, I don't like this, so I'm gonna talk to you about it. I'm not gonna go out here and talk to everybody else. And then it bothered me even more where this happened in October. This brother doesn't come out with a statement until Super Bowl media press.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's sort of. And again, when I asked the question, do you see him possibly going to another team? Because when I see that, again, this is an NFL mentality. That shows me a little weakness. Because if I'm a defensive end, I can just about say anything to you, and that's going to bring out a little weakness in you. Is that fair?
I mean, that's a fair assessment. But the thing about it is just, you know, sticks and stones. You know, and you have to have that. Words should never hurt you. What did they do to you that was so bad that you had to check into a hospital?
Wow. Well, I won't go there. I mean, all I was just saying.
I think there's more to this than
it's got to be more, because from the outside looking in, again, I guess from a machismo standpoint, you could have stepped.
I mean, if all they doing is just yelling at you and stuff, man, let it go. But
then you should have addressed Richie Incognito about using that N-word. Listen, I know you're trying to get me where I need to be, but no.
You're not like that.
Not like that.
Yeah.
Don't cross. I got too many ancestors that have passed away for you to degrade me like that. Put it on the line, 234-1441. We're trying to get through the subjects. The phone lines are open up. Sauya J Joey Man. Another exciting season of sports talk. Our engineer for this evening, Maurice, he'll put you through if you got a comment or a question on anything that we've been discussing up to this point. Lastly, on the NFL.
Okay.
Gay athletes.
Okay.
What's his name? Sam's, right?
Michael Sam's.
Michael Sam's, a defensive end for the former defensive end for the Missouri Tigers. He was named
co-defensive
player of the year
SEC.
in the SEC.
Yep.
And about a week ago, he came out and he stated that he was gay. My question to you, Joseph, is this a story for you? Meaning, you know, is this a story, a football player coming out saying that he's gay? Or is this another media-driven story? And second part of that question, is the NFL, quote unquote, as the media says, ready for an openly gay player?
First of all, I commend the brother for coming out, because that takes a lot of guts to do.
Okay.
Well, no.
Go ahead. I'll go. I'll
It-
hold my tongue on that one. Go ahead.
But I mean, I think just a lot of it, he just wanted to get a lot of it out the way. There's no question.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to put up any argument. This is who I am.
Mhm.
You know, take me as I am.
Mhm.
Will it hurt him later on down the line to a certain extent? Yeah, it
Okay.
will. And, you know, the thing about
Is the NFL ready? You're in the locker room. Your teammates
as a-
openly
as a
gay.
fan-
Is that something that would have,
as a fan of the game, do I
as a teammate, Joseph? Put it on the line.
I have no problem with that. We've had this situation. We've talked about this actually before on the show, and I keep using the analogy of when I was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I don't care who you are, as long if you in that hole in that foxhole with me, and I got to do mine. And if we do it, we'll make it out alive. And that mentality you can actually almost apply to this situation, and that's how I feel. As long as he comes out here and gives 100% every day, I ain't got no problem with it. So
Here's my thought process.
but to answer your last question, is the NFL ready? Is the NFL ready?
Mhm.
No.
You don't think so?
No, because still, I mean, we're still the NFL is still closed-minded. I mean,
Okay. Oh, well, here's my. When I heard the story and I thought about it, the first thing that came, and this is just my mentality. I'm just like you. You know, if that's who you are, you
Yeah.
know, that's who you are. I'm not
Yeah.
one to tell another individual who you want to be with or who you are. I don't get into that. That's again, if whoever you want to be with, I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no issues with that. I do have a little issue with the gay movement, and I'll come back to that in a second. Is the NFL ready? I think so, and here's what I mean by I think so, because maybe internally you don't agree with the lifestyle, okay, because I'll put it on the line, that's just not a lifestyle that I personally agree with or would go about it, but I don't agree with a lot of lifestyles, you know, and for to each his own, that's what I'm saying. So when I say, I believe that players will accept it, they're not going to be, oh, who is this guy? I don't think that's,
No, I don't think
that's a prehistoric mentality. Now, I don't think that they're not gonna come out and say, hey, I don't like this person. I don't think that. I think that is just, that's so far in the past. It's just like, okay, if that's who you are, let's just, can you handle this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And that's where I think the majority of the NFL's mentality is at. Now, some may not agree with the lifestyle, but they're not going to come out and say that. So I think it can work, and I think it will work. But here's the issue, not with the movement. I'll get back to that in a second. But I think I heard a reporter say it the best. He said, this is the only reason why it's a big story because we're talking about males. When Brittany Griner came out, now granted the NFL is bigger than the WNBA, so I'm definitely not comparing the sports, but it's still the same manner. You know, here's an openly gay woman out in the WNBA, and it's not an issue. But an openly gay male in the NFL, now it's an issue. And he said it best. He said, it's really not about, and I sort of have to agree with him. He said it's really not about the homosexual lifestyle to the degree. It's about men not comfortable with two men.
Yeah.
You know, we're okay with the women.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with that statement because I think that for a lot of men or heterosexual men, and we talk about a lot of subjects, so we're not afraid to touch these subjects. But I think, in all honesty, that's where a lot of heterosexual men have their issue. But again, my standpoint again, hey, to each its own. Now, let me just take one more step back in regards to the movement. I don't have no knock against anybody fighting for their freedom, their right to be judged for who they are as an individual. Go for it. Do what you have to do. But where I truly take issue, I seen something on
I think I know where you're going with this.
The New Black.
Yeah.
I don't buy that.
I mean, neither.
Because when you said you commend him for expressing themselves, or as the in the community, homosexual community, said, come out the closet. See, when you compare this is where my big issue comes. When you compare what your preference is, and some say, I'm born this way, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But I don't think the struggle and the history are comparable.
No.
And for you to compare the struggles and that the African Americans went through in this country, you know, because I know a lot of slaves. I know a lot of, I bet you Emmett Till, if he had a chance to find that closet, he would have went into it so he wouldn't have been murdered. See, that's the big difference between our struggle and your struggle. Not saying that, hey, you don't have a struggle, do your thing. But when you compare it and say it the same, and Dr. Claude Anderson said it the best. He said, you can't let nobody hijack your movement. And what he meant by that is not a knock against their movement, but he said your movement and your pain and your struggle are uniquely different than anyone's pain and struggle on this planet. Now here we are talking about, we're celebrating African American History Month. We ran a program earlier today, and I'm just sitting back, I'm getting ready to interview the brothers from RL and Troy Houghton, and I'm just listening to the stories of the Jim Crow laws, and I'm just like wow. You know, I don't know how my people made it. You know, because I know if I was living back then, Sauya might have been gone. But not to make light of it, but the real true aspect of it, that he said you can't have no one unless your struggle is comparative.